What's up, homies? I thought so. Last night I haven't been posting much on Instagram at all, but last night I decided to kind of post a series of stories. I used to do this all the time, so I do a lot of research in my free time. I like to read, science papers and all this kind of articles, and I like to, study human history and everything, geology, medicine, everything you can. I mean, what are you gonna do when you got 6, 7 hours of free time in the day to read after you're done with work? So. There's one super interesting thing about this is about carnivore diet, and there's one super interesting thing about Native American Indian elders is that there was actually many numerous documented chiefs and elders that were living over 120 years of age. There's many accounts of them, many documented accounts, and we see this actually all over the world in many different cultures. And here we have Chief John Smith, an Ojibwe Chippewa Indian who lived in the area of Class Lake, Minnesota. And he lived until the age of 137. Now, this is super interesting because we already know that the human telomeres they give us an idea of what is our maximum life expectancy, which is roughly around 130 years. So the human telomeres, our telomeres in our genome, in our chromosomes, they allow us a sort of 130-year window, basically, opportunity. And if you're dying at the age of 60 or 70 or 80, you're cutting off half your life. There's something you're doing wrong with your diet. There's something you're doing wrong with your lifestyle that's making you die at a young age. 137. I'm 31, soon 32. This guy's 102 years older, 105 years older still. So just imagine, even if you're 50 years old, you're a child compared to this man. Even if you're 60 years old, you're a child compared to this man. Even if you're 170 years old, you are a child compared to this man. And well, where does this come from? Again, this is a super interesting table I found. Oops, it doesn't pause. This is a super interesting table that I found, which is the plant to animal subsistence ratios by calorie intake in North American Plain Indians. So what do we see here? We see that the percentage of calories that come from animal foods actually is very, very, very high in most of the native tribes. So in some cases it's 100%. So the vast majority of their calories came from meat, and very little of it actually came from plant. And what's actually very interesting to me is that what I didn't realize is that actually not too many of them even ate that much fish. So this is very interesting. I thought that you would actually see a lot more fish. Now, this is a really interesting, super interesting, I guess you could call it an article called "How Much Meat Could a Meat Hunter Eat If a Meat Hunter Could Find Meat?" And this is about the Plains Indians' diet. Now, the key thing, I don't know if I want to read the whole thing out. Maybe I will. Doing the maths on the Plains Indian diets. The men's labor was again such that each private ate as much as 9 or 10 pounds of meat per day. So these Native American Indians were eating almost 5 kilos of meat a day. This is straight up from the first sentence. So historian Stephen Ambrose described the food requirements and diets of the members of the Lewis Clark expedition in April of 1805 in his prize-winning book, Undaunted Courage. The men were working hard, paddling or sometimes dragging heavily laden canoes for 20 miles or more per day up the Missouri River against the current and prevailing wind. When not with the boats, they were walking even greater distances over the prairie. The 30 or so members of the expedition ate a few roots and other edible plants as parts, usually provided by Sacagawea, but the vast majority of their diet was meat. The famished group consumed about 300 pounds of meat every day. It's useful to consider this example when one thinks about the nutritional requirements and diets of the Plains Indians and their use of the Vor buffalo jump. In very successful communal hunts at the Vor site, 200 to 300 bison were sometimes killed. That's tons of meat. Could they really eat that much meat? Wasn't there a great deal of waste? Is it possible or healthy for humans to be almost totally carnivores for their entire lives? Let's let modern science help us find the answer to these and other questions. So, yeah, these guys ate a lot of meat. They ate more meat in a single day than we eat food, you know. The amount of food that we eat in like 2 days. Even obese people eating tons of fast food are not eating like 5 kilos a day. Like you're talking like these mega obese Americans and Brits and Finns that have all these metabolic diseases. They're eating they're eating, almost 5 kilos of food a day, but it's not meat. All of it is, potato chips and rice cookies and candy and cookies, oats. So clearly so clearly what we're eating is much more important than how much we're eating. Now, granted, these guys were doing a lot of physical labor every day. Now, how much meat was available from a Vor site hunt? Most hunts at the Vor site occurred in the fall, after the bison breeding season, when breeding is finished in August and September. Buffalo bulls often wander away, leaving herds of predominantly cows and calves. When a jump occurred, the herd would consist of mostly mature female bison, some yearling or 2-year-old females, calves from the previous spring, and a few lingering bulls. Bulls often weighed 1,500 to 2,000 pounds. The very biggest weigh 1.5 tons. Mature females tip the scales at 1,000 to 1,400 pounds, probably averaging about 1,200. 2-year-old bred heifers weigh around 900 pounds. Yearling heifers are about 750 pounds. Calves in that season will weigh 450 to 575 pounds depending on gender, say 500 pounds on average. Let's assume a herd of 100 animals comprised 40% mature females, 10% 2-year-old bred heifers, 15% yearling heifers, 15% cows, and 10% bulls. Using average weights for those animals, it's reasonable to assume that the total weight of that herd would be around 86,000 pounds, or a total of 43 tons as live weight. On really successful hunts at the Vor site, the Indians may have killed 2 to 3 times that many animals. About 60% of a carcass would be usable, recoverable muscle meat and organs, with the hide and skeleton accounting for the other 40%. So there was no shortage of meat, right? And this is something I learned from the moose hunting trips. It's like when you go out for a moose hunt and you can have a group of 20, 30 hunters catch 3 moose, and if they're large moose, everyone's walking home with like 20 kilos of meat. It's just so much meat. It's incredible. And you only have to kill 1 or 2 or 3 of these animals. Think about these bison that weigh over a ton. And the amount of materials that you have, all the furs, the leather, the bone, the sinew, you got the colon, all these animal parts that could be used to make so many tools and to make teepees and to make clothes and to make just all sorts of tools. Just unbelievable, really. And yeah, like if you're this has been the case for millions of years. Like we've been eating mammoths, we've been eating bison, elephant. These are our primary sources of calories for the last few million years, is these super large animals. And there doesn't exist any other predator class on this planet. There aren't any other animals on this planet that are like this, that are predators on herds of mega mammals. Like, you're not gonna find any other animal on Earth that hunts entire herds of the largest walking mammals, right? Maybe you'll have a group of lions, 5, 6, 10. They'll hunt one or two. They'll eat like a ton of meat a week or something, but you're not going to see, you're not going to see a group of lions slaughter, you know, 86,000 pounds or 3 times that, over 100 tons of meat in a week. You're not going to see that. And so we are the top predators of the entire food chain. We are the highest ranking carnivores of all carnivores on this planet. I mean, just these numbers, How much meat? Continued. Assumptions that the yield from typical herd of 100 buffalo. Assumptions that. Oh, let's go back and read the last sentence. So, given our assumptions that that means the yield from a typical herd of 100 buffalo would be around 51,000 pounds of meat. Oh man, why do they have to? They could just round this up. 52,000 pounds of meat, 26 tons, plus 3 to 4 tons each of marrow, bone, and hide. The rest of the carcass is 15 to 25% of the total original weight. Mostly non-marrow bones were left behind. These are the remnants archaeologists find and analyze at the Vor site. Calories available versus calories required. Now this stuff, again, the people writing this, they might not, this is based, the whole thing about calories and diet, the average person, how do you say, our common understanding, the general understanding of how dieting works in terms of calories is flawed. So bear that in mind when people are doing calculations on how much calories are required and how much is eaten and all this kind of stuff. Because, what we understand today from diet and dieting is based off of the corporate interests of the food corporations and the pharmaceutical organizations. So, calories available versus calories required. If a man doesn't get out of bed or do any physical work, she will still burn calories as the body performs basic functions like breathing, digesting, pumping blood, thinking, and maintaining normal body temperature. This is called basal metabolism. Basal metabolism, and it varies according to the size, age, and gender of the person in question. Let's take a 30-year-old male Indian who is 5 foot 10 inches tall and weighs 166 pounds. If he did nothing at all, he would still require around 1,800 calories daily to maintain basic life functions. Likewise, a woman of the same age who was 5 foot 5 inches and 125 pounds would need approximately 1,365 calories per day for maintenance. If you add physical activity, exercise to the energy equation, the caloric requirement increases. Hunting, butchering, processing buffalo is hard work. Using our male Indian from the previous example, if he were completing strenuous work required during the buffalo hunt and its aftermath, his total estimated energy expenditure (TEE) would be between why don't they round these fucking numbers up? 4,000 to 5,000 calories. Every single one of these is 3,995. The woman in our earlier example would have a TEE value of 3,000 to 3,600 calories daily. See, they rounded it up there. Adolescent requirements are similar to adult women. A child around 10 years of age would require up to 3,000 calories. These values are what is needed to maintain body weight. If weight gain was desired or growth in stature was occurring, these values would need to increase by about 500 calories a day. Pregnancy, lactation, and other variables can also increase caloric requirements. So how much meat is required? The caloric content of meat varies with the tissue and fat content, but according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, lean raw buffalo meat provides around 500 calories per pound. Cooking lowers the nutritional content slightly, providing around 445 calories per raw pound. Assuming our hypothetical hunter only consumed cooked buffalo meat, he would require up to 10.6 pounds daily to meet his TEE calorie recommendation. A hunter probably wouldn't carry that much meat with him and couldn't have consumed it even if it were available, so he'd either have to consume a more calorie-rich food or he'd lose weight fairly quickly. Probably he'd do both in the days leading up and following the jump. Let's follow one of the hunters through the hypothetical hunt at the Vor Buffalo jump. First, if he participated in gathering the herd, our young man would be sent out several days prior to the jump to find and collect a critical mass of bison. It's likely that he'd be walking fast or running for at least 12 hours per day. After driving the buffalo over the jump, another very strenuous phase would begin immediately. The Indians butchered the bison, which involved skinning and gutting them into transportable chunks that were easy to move quickly before the meat spoiled. They had perhaps, they probably did beef jerky, bison jerky. You do that straight away. You just cut it all up and dry it up, and then it's good to go. You lose a lot of the weight. You have a ton of meat. So the meat doesn't spoil that quickly if you know what you're doing. You can actually There's a lot of things you can do to prevent that spoilage immediately from the carcass. Anyway, they had perhaps a 3 to 5 day period to butcher 60 to 300 buffalo. They undoubtedly worked in teams from dawn to dark, at least 9 to 10 hours per day in late autumn. They'd pull a carcass out of the pile, skin it, remove the entrails and internal organs, and chop the skeleton and associated muscles and parts from the joint. If they trapped 200 bison in a communal hunt, they'd have to butcher an average of 40 carcasses a day for 5 days. Perhaps 100 people would be involved in the butchering, and they would probably they probably worked in teams of 4 to 6 persons per carcass at any given time. If they had 5 people on each team, yeah, blah blah blah. So you can see here the rest of the article. But anyway, the idea is they ate a lot of meat. They stored a lot of meat. They knew what they were doing, and they ate a significant amount of meat. So this is still contested. This is a very controversial opinion here. This is actually pretty controversial. A lot of people don't like it when you say this to them. A lot of people don't like because it goes against a lot of sort of common narratives about human overpopulation and overconsumption. But there are some estimates about the peak bison population in North America, which exceed the modern global population of humans. So there were more bison. At some point in time, there was more bison on the North American plains than there were humans in the world today. So you're talking animals that are 1 to 2,000 pounds each, and there was billions of them on the North American plains. The largest estimate I found was between 8 to 10 billion bison. So think about that. Oh, humans are overpopulating and we're blah 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 blah. Oh, overconsumption. Pure horseshit. These bison were eating 100 times more food than we are today in the entire human population. I mean, these things were, a modern human today, if it's like a human today weighs 60, 70, 80 to 100 kilos, These bison, each bison weighed 10 times more than a human did. So they were eating, a lot more food. So this is a list of the leading causes of death. I think, I don't remember actually from which, the World Health Organization Global Health Estimates. So ischemic heart disease is number 1. Stroke. So again, strokes are heart disease. This will go up in the next few years. This is going to go up tremendously, and this will become the leading cause of death soon on this list in the next few years. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Again, these are kind of all in the same category. Lower respiratory infections. So this is like bacterial infections in the lungs. You're talking about just pneumonia, for example. Neonatal conditions. I'm not sure what that means. I think like birth conditions. So again, trachea, bronchus, lung cancers, again, more breathing, lung problems. This is not necessarily related to smoking, but it is heavily associated with smoking. So it, it's they're probably part of the same the they're probably part of the same digestion, the same metabolic disease list. There's a lot of connections to be made between breathing and lung problems and the heart problems, and that they're associated with the same issues. So it's not directly smoking. It could actually be from what you're eating. Again, because anyway, Alzheimer's disease and other dementias, these are generally prion related diseases, but there is a lot of correlation with carbohydrates and basically diabetes to the brain. Diarrheal diseases, so intestinal tract. So again, part of the digestive issues. Kidney diseases again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the 10 leading causes of deaths. So actually it says here 7 of the 10 leading causes are due to eating. These are all due to the eating. And one could possibly make an argument, a hypothesis, that the next 3 are also related to whatever is causing all these diseases, right? So that what I'm saying is that it's possible that that the trachea, bronchus, neonatal, lower respiratory, and diarrhea. Well, we know that diarrheal diseases from metabolism problems, so what you're eating. But it's possible that the other ones that are not part of this non-communicable diseases are actually also due to poor diet. So, we're talking number of deaths in millions per year. So we're, in terms of heart diseases, if you combine ischemic heart disease, stroke, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, if you combine those 3, we're talking well over, almost 15 million deaths a year just from those 3, right? We should be able to add diabetes and kidney in there too. But almost 18 million people die a year because they are eating shit. They're eating pure fucking fast food. I mean, these diseases come from eating fast food. And what is fast food? Fast food is mostly plant-based carbohydrates. When you're drinking a Coca-Cola, a soda, that sugar comes from where? It comes from plants. It comes from monocrop cultures. It comes from these super farms that are automated, that are killing bee populations. High fructose corn syrup, for example, sugar. Um, these potatoes, pasta, and no one's going to argue against that. Rice as well, oats, wheat. Everybody knows it's not even this. This is not conspiratorial. Everybody knows that these things cause heart disease, cause diabetes, cause kidney diseases. There's no. But none of these things come from eating and overeating meat. So here's an interesting study. Now I'm not going to read all these studies. I'm just going to announce them, all right, and show a little bit of details from each one of these studies, what's super interesting about them. And there's a major misconception that high-fat diets cause heart disease, cause cholesterol problems, and all this kind of nonsense. But the science is telling us the exact opposite. The science is telling us that actually it's the carbohydrates that are causing these problems, not the fat, not the meat, not the animal products. And so what do we see here? Dietary carbohydrate quantity and quality and risk of cardiovascular disease all cause cardiovascular and cancer mortality, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Very interesting study. I think this was done in China. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here. So these are the results. And the conclusions is that increased consumption of dietary carbohydrate intake is associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and all-cause mortality. Linear relation was found for cardiovascular disease and stroke, but non-linear relation for all-cause mortality. More studies are warranted to investigate the association of dietary carbohydrate quality using combined indicators in cardiovascular disease and mortality. So basically what they're saying is, guys, what we've been told is horseshit, and it looks like the real elephant in the room is carbohydrates and not actually fat. Here's another study. Oh, I don't know how to get rid of anyway, so it's modern diets low in meat and natural fats could be contributing towards violent behavior in America, particularly among teenagers, according to a new report. This is very interesting, right? The report by nutrition researcher Sylvia Anusik, PhD, found that deficiencies of the vitamins A, D, K, B1, B3, B6, B12, and folate, and the minerals iodine, potassium, iron, magnesium, zinc, chromium, and manganese can lead to mental instability and violent behavior. The brain and the nervous system require specific nutrients to function properly, and the evidence is overwhelming that nutrient deficiencies can lead to aggression and violent behavior. So again, it pointed out that doctors in the U.S. are seeing a return of nutritional deficiency diseases such as pellagra, the symptoms of which include anxiety, hyperactivity, depression, fatigue, headache, insomnia, hallucinations. There's also been a rise in zinc deficiencies, which is linked with angry, aggressive, and hostile behavior. Again, this is the fattest nation on earth. This is the fattest population of people on earth. And they suffer from nutrient deficiencies. I have a mute button, so I'm going to have to mute every now and then to take a sip from my coffee, but don't worry about that. Here's another one. So this is super interesting. This is especially important for you bodybuilders out there, right? This is the anabolic response to protein ingestion during the recovery from exercises. No upper limit to magnitude and duration in vivo in humans. So the anabolic response to protein ingestion during recovery from exercise has no upper limit in magnitude and duration in vivo in humans. That means, so some of you know, especially if you were born in the 90s and you were like a bodybuilder during the early 10s, that there was a misconception going on that there was a blatant lie by the industrial fast food corporations that humans don't digest more than 25 grams of protein a day, that we have like a limit, an upper cap. And it's completely untrue. In fact, there's no limit, especially after training. If you're exercising, there's no limit to how much protein your body is absorbing. So after you exercise as hard as you can. After you exercise, you eat as much protein as possible. That is basically what you should be doing. Don't listen to the horseshit that you can't consume more than 25 grams. You need to be eating as much as possible. So the belief that the anabolic response to feeding during post-exercise recovery is transient and has upper limit, and that exercise and that excess amino acids are being oxidized lacks scientific proof. Using a comprehensive quadruple isotope tracer feeding infusion approach, we showed that the ingestion of 100-gram protein results in a greater and more prolonged anabolic response when compared to the ingestion of 25 grams of protein. We demonstrate a dose-response increase in dietary protein-derived plasma amino acid availability and subsequent incorporation to muscle protein. Ingestion of a large bolus of protein further increases the whole body protein net balance, mixed muscle, myofibrillar, muscle connective, and plasma protein synthesis rates. Protein ingestion has a negligible impact on whole body protein breakdown rates or amino acid oxidation rates. These findings demonstrate that the magnitude and duration of the anabolic response to protein ingestion is not restricted and has previously been underestimated in vivo humans. We are protein digestion machines. That's what they're saying. Nutrients found in beef and dairy. Yeah, sorry, my headset seems to turn off by itself every now and then. So Nutrient found in beef and dairy improves immune response to cancer. Pretty cool, huh? It's transvasenic acid, TVA. Found it's a fatty acid found in beef, lamb, and dairy products. Improves the ability of immune cells to fight tumors. A lot of the reasons why people get cancers to begin with isn't so much that a lot of it has got to do with actually we're weakening the body's ability to respond to tumor cells. So a lot of, ingestion of plastics, not eating enough fat, but also there's other things too, like mouthwashes and a lot of toothpastes and stuff like that. What they do is they destroy your mouth bacteria, and that mouth bacteria, when you swallow it, when you swallow your spit and your saliva, what happens is that it creates a chemical reaction in your gut. It's dripping into your gut. And from there, what happens is it creates, I'm not sure if it's a type of acid or it's a type of gas. So it's some type of chemical anyway, which has a profound effect on our ability to fight tumor cells. So, of course, if we're drinking, these bullshit mouthwashes and we're using these unsafe toothpastes, what's happening is it's part of this mechanism where we're disabling our body's innate ability to fight tumor cells, right? And that's also happening. And then, of course, tumors, they thrive on carbohydrates. We know this. Tumors consume glucose and sugars. So we're shutting down we have all these chemicals, all these products that are shutting down our body's ability to fight tumors. Then we starve it of vital nutrients that we get from meat. And then we force feed ourselves an addiction diet of carbohydrates, which stimulates tumor growth. I mean, it's almost as if this is deliberate, right? Like, this is like ridiculous. And instead of changing our diets, we're like, hey, take these pills. So clearly there's something wrong with our diet. Oxalates are one of many types of chemicals in plants that are toxic. So there's leptins, oxalates, carcinogens, pesticides. There's a whole list of things that are in plants, but oxalates especially are found in vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains. Leafy green vegetables, soy, almonds, potatoes, tea, rhubarb, cereal grains, beets. We also produce them in the body as a waste product. So what's wrong with oxalates? Well, it's been found that oxalates actually induce breast cancer via a process of microcalcification. So, again, these foods that contain oxalates, so leafy vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, soy, almonds, potatoes, tea, rhubarb, cereal grains like oats and beets, they induce breast cancer. So they are toxic. It's a pretty interesting presentation. So this is one of my favorite studies, actually, in recent years that I've found. And it's from the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry. It's called The Analysis of Glyphosate Residues in Foods from the Canadian Retail Markets between 2015 and 2017. So they went and gathered samples of animal products from the retail market, so stores, and they analyzed the pesticide content and the herbicide residual content in these food items, dairy, meat, and to see if there's any, to see how much there is. So what they found was dairy and meat was the smallest category. There was a total of 22 samples, which included 10 dairy-based products and 12 meat-based products. Glyphosate was not detected in any of the samples, as expected. Whatever the source of the glyphosate was not detected in these products because the animals will metabolize and eliminate the pesticide before it can transfer to the milk or wheat. These herbivores, these ruminants, they have evolved to process the natural pesticides and the natural herbicides that are in the plants. They've evolved to process these. We can't do that. That's why we're getting diseases like celiac disease, because we are eating what cows are eating. We're literally being force-fed a diet that you give to cows. Imagine what happens when you give a lion a vegan-only diet. Everybody knows what happens. We hear about this all the time when a vegan tries to get her cat to eat a vegan-only diet. When it fucking dies. Or when a vegan tries to get their dog. Look, if you have a cat or a dog, you're not a vegan, okay? That's an animal product. Pets are animal products, okay? And the food that you give them are also generally animal products. You can just read the label, right? And also, what we find nowadays is that the life expectancy of house cats and house dogs have actually tremendously plummeted because of all the added potatoes and rice and these vegetables in their foods, and seed oils. So it's really quite ridiculous. It's the reason that dogs are a man's best friend is because dogs eat what humans eat and we hunt the same shit together, right? Every dog breed that exists today, one way or another, has something to do with hunting. I mean, maybe today it's a little different. I mean, I don't think Paris Hilton's dog is I mean, it could be like a rat hunter, but either way, when you see a Suomen pystykorva or a flat-coated retriever or these kind of dogs, they're pointers, they're sniffer dogs. They're all based on some kind of hunting, and it's instinctive. They're born that way. You don't have to train them. They're born and they run and they do exactly what they evolved to do. A flat-coated retriever, she will swim and dive and be in the water her whole life looking for shit to fetch. It's her favorite thing to do. A Suomen pystykorva doesn't like the water. They're going to stay out of it most of the time. They're scared of it. They don't want to have anything to do with it. What they want to do is run off 20 fucking kilometers in one direction and look for something to bark at. And they do that. That's why you have to leave them on the leash. So there's a reason why these animals are dying at higher rates now and lower age. It's because we're feeding them a lot of this plant material in their little crackers, the dog crackers. So gluten intolerance, some glyphosate. So there is a lot of indication that the overuse of pesticides and herbicides, including glyphosate, could be contributing to our epidemic of celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So there is actually a lot of research on this. We know that it has something to do with this, but personally I think this is sort of a scapegoat because actually, it's not yet, it'll show up later, but it's anyway, it's because the plants produce their own pesticides that are actually even more toxic than glyphosate, that are even more dangerous than a lot of the herbicides that we are using. In fact, in some cases they're like 10 times more toxic, and they contain like 10 times more. Remember, like, for example, with nicotine and tobacco, all plants have their own sort of pesticides. So going a little bit off track here, again, researchers show that high protein diet does not affect kidney function. There is no evidence that any of our organs suffer from eating too much meat. This is a super interesting study. Humans were actually apex predators who ate meat for 2 million years study. So Toronto, despite a widespread belief that humans owe their evolution to the dietary flexibility in eating both meat and vegetables, researchers in Israel suggest that early humans were actually apex predators who hunted large animals for 2 million years before they sought vegetables to supplement their diet. Again, Native American culture. They were literally, for 2 million years, we've been eating elephants, mammoths, bison, like super, super large animals. And what's interesting about this diagram here is that um, the adoption of animal, like canines, dogs, came after we stopped hunting these larger animals. So the smaller and smaller the animals we were hunting got, the more we needed companions and friends, right, to help us hunt. Like deer. Deer is very difficult to hunt. It's probably more difficult to hunt than an elephant, actually, or a mammoth. Yeah, it's maybe less dangerous, but those cocksuckers, they run like crazy. You know, you're not going to catch up with them. It's a lot of work. You need dogs to catch those things. And a lot of this is due to, in the last 2 million years, there's been like 10 or 15 asteroids with, almost 8 million megatons of yield completely obliterate the entire planet and push, hundreds of species to extinction, especially the mega mammals. There's these, this is, you know, the reason why we're not eating mammoths anymore is because they all went extinct in some kind of asteroid catastrophe or some kind of solar catastrophe or these kind of events. If you have a multi-million megaton asteroid land in the Pacific, you're gonna have 200-meter tall waves crash all around the entire coastline of the Pacific. Same, with the Atlantic. If you have a severe, especially like the Indian Ocean, if you have a multi-million ton asteroid impact there, it's a relatively small ocean. You're going to completely obliterate the entire coastline, and then consequently what happens is you have massive precipitation globally for like 100 years where nothing grows because everything is just washing out into the oceans. It's just rain forever. So there was a major catastrophe. There's actually two catastrophes at the end of the Younger Dryas around 12,000 years ago. One was a Miyake event. A Miyake event could be basically a massive asteroid hitting the sun and then basically the backside of the sun exploding out and kicking out a massive CME and burning the entire atmosphere. And then later on, there was an 8 million megaton asteroid impact that landed into the Laurentide ice sheet, which caused another complete obliteration of the mega mammals of our planet. So there was a lot of activity going on 12, 13,000 years ago, which caused a massive amount of our major animals to go extinct. And that forced, especially that intermediary period between the first catastrophe and the second at the end of the Younger Dryas, where people started to actually grow grains and started to actually herd animals and agriculture to move all this stuff underground so they could survive long periods underground. And that's where a lot of modern religions come from, that era, that intermediary period between those two catastrophes and the second catastrophe. So a lot of this grain eating and plant eating, it was necessary for our survival. It certainly was, because you couldn't live on the land anymore for a long period of time. So here, the evolution of this is the name of the study. Again, I advise you to visit my Instagram account and go check it out. The journal, so saturated fats and reassessment of proposal of food-based recommendations, basic stuff. Again, so this is cholesterol. That the recommendation to limit dietary saturated fatty acid intake has persisted despite mounting evidence to the contrary. So again, it's not the fat and cholesterol that's an indicator of heart disease. It's lack of fat, actually, and in most cases, having too low cholesterol is worse than having too high cholesterol, because cholesterol is part of a protective mechanism in your body. So having too low cholesterol is much more dangerous than having too high cholesterol. You can go and read this yourself. But again, super interesting. There's a link to 20 scientific papers. You can go and click that. I don't want to... Here. So here's 20 studies that show that it's about carbohydrates and not fats, and that cholesterol is not something to worry about. Again, this is a super interesting picture. Donuts, what are they made of? Sugar, chocolate, nuts, wheat. It's all plant. It's all plant-based. What's this ice cream made of? Okay, there's a little bit of... You can do it out of coconut nowadays. But again, it's sugar, chocolate, waffle. It's all plants. You know, potato crisps, plant oil, the soda, sugar. The candy here, mint, sugar, chocolate, peanuts. This is the modern diet. And this is what I call plant-based carbohydrates. Here's an interesting thing that we saw in the previous video of mine that you guys, some of you saw, some of you watched yesterday, that, no, not yesterday, but a few weeks ago, that most of the deforestation that's ongoing has nothing to do, is not because of animal agriculture. It's not animal agriculture that's causing deforestation. We know this because it's mainly roads, and that the vast majority of the monocrop culture and the farming that's ongoing is for human consumption. It's for making oils, it's for making fast food, it's for producing sugar, it's for producing alcohol, biofuels. Around 5% goes to feeding cows, but not much more than that. And the vast majority of the deforestation is actually caused by roads. And we saw this in one of the previous videos of mine, so I'm not going to go into details there. Lack of association or inverse association between low-density lipoprotein cholesterol and mortality in the elderly. So this study goes and it studies LDL, low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, LDLC. So conclusion, high LDLC is inversely associated with mortality in most people over 60 years. So basically, having high LDLC cholesterol meant that you are more likely to live a longer life. Right? So this finding is inconsistent. This is extremely important because people are being given statins. Your brain is made of cholesterol. Those statins are destroying people's lives. They are absolutely disgustingly toxic. You need to get everybody you know who's on statins, you need to get them off of it. You need to show them these studies. This finding is inconsistent with the cholesterol hypothesis that cholesterol, particularly LDLC, is inherently atherogenic. We produce cholesterol in our body. Why would your body produce something that kills it? It doesn't make sense. Anyway, since elderly people with high LDLC live as long or longer than those with low LDLC, our analysis provides reason to question the validity of the cholesterol hypothesis. Moreover, our study, again, it's to sell drugs, it's to sell bullshit, it's to sell fucking, it's to sell, it's just this massive fucking corruption in the food and medical industry where they're deliberately poisoning you, they're lying to you about what the poisoning, what's happening in your body, and they're selling you bullshit drugs to mitigate things that are not a fucking problem, that are from all this crap. It's a huge fucking loop, and all they're doing is taking your life. They're removing all your energy. They're removing all your... it's just a massive corruption. Moreover, our study provides the rationale for a reevaluation of guidelines recommending pharmacological reduction of LDL-C in elderly as a component of cardiovascular disease and prevention strategies. Here, this is what I wanted to show us earlier. So this goes back to the whole thing with pesticides. Studies show natural pesticides and toxins are more harmful than the man-made natural carcinogens. So plants contain 10,000 times more natural pesticides by weight than industrial sprayed pesticides. 10,000 times more. Plants are orders of magnitude more likely to cause cancer in animal models than industrial pesticides. 20 out of 42 toxins tested in rats were carcinogens, including are apples, bananas, carrots, and mushrooms. 10 years ago, if somebody told you this, you'd think they were fucking crazy. This is a super interesting, this is a population 1 experiment, so the sample size was 1. There's the DOI. What happens if you overeat on low carbs? So this sample size 1 experiment published in 2021 where they fed an individual 5,800 calories for 21 days at a time, and then so he had a break, he lost the weight, they reset, and they went back to do the next part of the experiment. And the diets were low carb, low fat, and vegan, separated by washout periods of 3 months. So they had a 3-month period where they washed out and reset and got the weight back down so after 21 days overfeeding low carb, the individual gained 1.3 kilograms plus decreased his waist circumference. In this particular example, they were eating twice as much protein as the low fat. So this guy was eating a ton of protein. 21 days, he gained 1.3 kilograms, but his waist size decreased. He lost fat around his waist, but increased in weight. That means he was gaining muscle mass. So here, so the low-fat diet, after 21 days overfeeding low-fat diet, he gained 7.1 kilos plus increased his waist circumference. So this guy was just gaining fat. He was just getting fatter and fatter and fatter. Again, the body metabolizes fat very, very well. It doesn't like carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are poison for the human body. After 21 days of overfeeding vegan, he gained 4.7 kilograms and increased his waist circumference. So like, isn't that crazy that you can eat 6,000 calories for 21 days straight of low carb, so basically just animal product diet, and you're gonna gain only gain 1.3 kilograms, but you're gonna lose fat. So you're gaining muscle mass. Oh, by the way, this guy was actually exercising a lot. He was exercising a tremendous amount. It was like 3 times a week plus cycling and stuff. So he was actually exercising on all 3 of these diets. He was not gaining muscle mass on his low fat or his vegan diet, even though he was exercising, doing high intensity training 3 times a week. So think about that. Exercising on a low fat or a vegan diet is actually probably bad for you because you're starving your body. It has to eat itself, I guess. Saturated fat does not clog the arteries. Coronary heart disease is coronary heart disease is a chronic inflammatory condition, the risk of which can be effectively reduced from healthy lifestyle interventions. So again, it's not the fat. This is also a super interesting study. Total meat intake is associated with life expectancy, a cross-sectional data analysis of 175 contemporary populations. Background: the association between a plant-based diet, vegetarianism, and extended lifespan is increasingly criticized since it may be based on the lack of representative data and insufficient removal of confounders such as lifestyles. Aim: we examined the association between meat intake and life expectancy at a population level based on ecological data published by the United Nations agencies. Methods: population-specific data were obtained from 175 countries and territories. Scatter plots, bivariates, partial correlation and linear regression models were used with SPSS 25 to explore and compare the correlations between newborn life expectancy at 5 years of life, and intakes of meat and carbohydrate crops, respectively. The established risk factors to life expectancy, calorie intake, urbanization, obesity, and educational levels were included as the potential confounders. Results: worldwide bivariate correlation analysis revealed that the meat intake is positively correlated with life expectancies. This relationship remained significant when influences of caloric intake, urbanization, obesity, education, and carbohydrate crops were controlled. Stepwise linear regression selected meat intake, not carbohydrate crops, as one of them. See, these guys are calling it carbohydrate crops as one of the most significant predictors of life expectancy. In contrast, carbohydrate crops showed a weak and negative correlation with life expectancy. Conclusion: if meat intake is not incorporated into nutrition science for predicting human life expectancy, results could prove inaccurate. So basically, even they're saying carbohydrate crops. See, I've been saying plant-based carbohydrates. These guys are saying carbohydrate crops. Again, showed weak and negative correlation with life expectancy. Here's the data. There's a lot of graphs actually in that. It's a very good study. But basically, kilograms per person, the people that lived the longest, as you can see here, the more meat you ate, the longer you lived. And the people who lived over 80 were all eating over 100, they were eating over 100 kilos of meat a year. and which is still small compared to what the Native American Indians were eating. So, hiding unhealthy heart outcomes in low-fat diet trials, the women's health, and this is a really interesting study. It's actually kind of sad to read because it goes to show just how corrupt it is and how much women suffer. Women suffer a lot more from a low-fat diet than men do, and the health impacts that it has on their reproductive health, on it's just terrible. It's really terrible, and the corruption is so bad. They're hiding so much of it, and I really strongly recommend reading this because it really goes to show, like especially elderly women, like you have to be eating a lot of meat if you want to be healthy and you want to live a long life. Like you really do. You really, really do. Super interesting study, but it also reveals just how negatively it impacts women's health. It really is bad. Okay, so these story on my Instagram page won't be up forever. In fact, there's only a few hours left. So probably by the time some of you watch this video, it's not going to be up anymore, but at least you got the data from here. And every now and then I do something like this on my stories, which is super interesting. Um, and Yeah, I have a lot more data. I mean, this is just a small sample of all the studies that I've come across. I skim over most of them. Some of them I read all the way through, especially the short ones, if they're only a few pages long. Some of these studies, sometimes they're like 40 pages long, 50 pages long, and um, yeah, I don't really read through all of them. So, but I have there's so much data on so much stuff that I've read about, and I love to share it. The problem, of course, is very difficult to share a lot of this information with people because it's very a lot of people they don't they've never seen what a scientific article looks like. They've never seen what a study looks like. They have no idea what research looks like or data or they've never heard of all these random terms that you find in these articles and studies, and they have no idea how complex it can actually be. And it's so easy to think in very basic terms. Oh, yes and no, or this exists, this doesn't exist, or cholesterol is bad, cholesterol is good. This just like this very binary approach to kind of just, I don't want to think about it, give me a yes or no answer. But the truth is, when you look at it scientifically, there's like 15 layers of maybes. And the conclusion is almost always, well, we're not completely sure, but the data and the evidence is telling us that you should be concerned, or that there's this and that. And the thing is, like, what's really annoying, especially about the, the food sciences and nutritional sciences, is that it's an area that breeds a lot of emotion, and the vast majority of people who are talking in terms of nutrition don't know what they're talking about because they're not scientifically driven. Nutritionists, or no, it's like on bodybuilding.com or a lot of these forums online, it's just full of horseshit because everybody there thinks they're a fucking expert. Everybody there is never, they don't know what studies look like. They don't know how to actually do research. They don't know how to read these stuff. They don't have they just haven't gone through the process of scientific investigation. They've never done a study. They've never done research like from a professional perspective. And so what happens is it's so easy for them to just believe complete horseshit and nonsense because it's like, oh, the BBC said so, you know. And it's like, oh, fiber is healthy. Well, it's not. Fiber is actually super toxic. And the only reason why people think that fiber is healthy is because the Kellogg's company, you know, have fucking paid all the scientists to say that shit when it's completely untrue. And that there's been and that the vegan diet and the vegetarian diet, a lot of it is a byproduct of Seventh-day Adventist Church trying to get people to be less sexual. So it's the vegan and vegetarian diet is an attack on human sexuality. It's an attack on our um, desire to have great sex and to it's if you look into it for long enough, you'll see that a lot of this stuff comes from the Seventh Day Adventist Church cult, and the mission is to reduce sexual appetite in the population, because they think that it's a sin. So very interesting stuff. But again, if if you're worried about either your health or the health of people around you, show them some of this stuff, because one of the nice things about this is, like, if you're struggling with overeating, you're the kind of person that just you're a ravenous eater, and I like to do that. If I'm out of control, I'm I totally know where you're coming from. I'll have 4 family-sized pizzas in a row and 3 bags of Cheetos right after. Like, I know what it's like to go all out on food. Like, I fully understand that, and and I even spent 2 years doing that basically every day, because I know how to lose fat. I know how to go from a size 45 to a size 29-inch waist. I know I've done it 4 times. But 2 years of overeating, and it's nice. I like overeating. It's fucking awesome, actually. I really do like and enjoy eating like several pizzas in a row. But at the same time, I've also trained myself, and I know how to lose all that extra fat and become healthy again. But also, what I've discovered this time around is that you can actually just overeat meat and still lose fat and become healthier. Because the dangerous part of overeating is not actually the overeating, it's the carbohydrates. It's the plant product in that, right? So if you're eating a burger at McDonald's, it's not the meat that's dangerous. It's the buns, it's the salad, it's the tomato, it's the ketchup, it's the pickles, it's the potato chips, it's the soda, it's everything else around it, right? So, if you're struggling with overeating and you want to start to change your life, well, one of the easiest ways to do that is stop overeating, like continue overeating, but instead of overeating carbohydrates, overeat meat. Instead of like eating, 6 kilos of pizza a day, go for 6 kilos of steak or mince meat, and start there. Start by overeating shitloads of animal product like meat and cheese and milk and eggs. Go all out on that. Now be careful with those sauces, those barbecue sauces and those powders, those these barbecue powders and shit, because they're most of the time they're like 60% sugar. So you don't really want to add that too much of that anyway. And one trick for me, what I do if I go on a fat loss, if I'm doing like a major cut where I'm trying to shed as much fat as possible, I throw everything away from my kitchen. There is no food in my kitchen, nothing in the fridge. There is nothing left. I keep all the meat in the freezer, and I take out what I'm going to eat the next day from in the freezer the night before. I let it defrost, and that's it. That's what I have the next day. So, and I also live pretty far away from the store, so that helps. But like, you don't want to have any cookies around. It's not about discipline. Like, fuck all those people that say it's about discipline and all that shit, because they don't. It's not about discipline, right? It's about exposure. It's like, if you're a drug addict, the reason you're a drug addict is because you're surrounded by drugs. You're surrounded by dealers. You're surrounded by people who fucking love the drugs you're taking, right? And yes, you're not going to stop taking drugs as long as those drugs are around you. If you wanna, if it's like, it's not, it's the trick is just to remove all of it from around you. It's not about discipline. It's not about trying to tell yourself to control yourself when there's a table full of food. Like, if you go to a buffet, with all your friends, and there's a massive fucking, huge, awesome selection of all this delicious stuff that you want to eat. That's where the discipline starts to kick in. But at the same time, I'm the sort of person, I'm just gonna eat it all up. I'm just because when I go back home for the next 3 weeks, I'm not. There's none of that. There's none. There's no snacks. There is no. Um, there is no. During my fasting, during my cutting, my fat cutting, my weight shedding, there is no food in the kitchen. There is no food anywhere around me. I'll drink coffee all day. That helps to kind of get the that helps a lot. But it's not about discipline. And I'm the sort of person I advise doing too much exercise if you're obese, if you're overweight, because if you haven't been training your whole life and you haven't been exercising and you got a lot of weight on your knees and on your lungs, it's probably not safe or good for you to start running around because you could really seriously cause a lot of harm. So I think it's better to just first control your eating, get that, clean, throw away all the shit from your fridge, literally empty everything out, throw it all away, just, and stop buying it. When I was a heavy cigarette smoker 10 years ago, how I quit or how I stopped is I just stopped buying it. I didn't stop smoking cigarettes. I just taught myself to stop buying it. So yeah, I would bum a lot of cigarettes from friends, which is probably not like the best way to do it. But I would have a few cigarettes here and there. It's just I just train myself not to buy them anymore. I hate buying cigarettes. I can't do it. It just feels weird. And now, like, I smoke cigars, but it's just I can go 4 weeks without smoking cigars and I'm fine. I've trained myself so well to control addictions that it's very difficult for me to become addicted to stuff nowadays. Even though I used to have an extreme a addictive personality. It's foods and drugs and all this kind of stuff. But it's like I don't have any addictions, and all my addictions I can just switch them off very quickly now. It's just I've managed to be able to do that over the years because the trick, you're never going to be able to quit something or change your lifestyle overnight, right? You're going to learn how to quit smoking or quit eating like a pig, like a disgusting pig. You're going to learn to do that by by quitting 1,000 times. It's by quitting 1,000 times. You have to quit over and over and over again. And don't feel so guilty when you fall back, cuz I like a cigarette from time to time. I don't give a fuck. I think cigarettes are fucking awesome. I don't smoke cigarettes. I can't even smoke more than half a cigarette. I just can't inhale smoke anymore. It's impossible. Like I try, but I force myself to enjoy a cigarette from time to time because I kind of like it. I don't want to sit back and do something that makes me feel guilty. Oh, it's like, it just sucks. Like, if, every day, every time you eat and you overeat and you feel like shit and you spend months and every day feeling guilty about what you're eating and every day about over consuming or smoking. Oh, I gotta quit. Every time you smoke a cigarette, oh, I gotta quit, man. I can't do this forever. It's just shit way to live, man. And it's either you fucking enjoy it or you do something about it. But again, it's cigarettes are a bit more difficult. They're like definitely definitely require a lot in order to break free from. But again, it's this exposure. You don't want to be exposed to it. You want to remove it from your life. You want to take all that shit away from your shelves. You want to take that shit, and that helps a lot. So instead of discipline, think about it in terms of exposure. Don't expose yourself to it, and then you don't need to be disciplined. You don't need discipline if you're not exposed to it, It's like the gym. You don't, here's the trick. Drive to the gym every day, go into the locker room, and change into your gym clothes, walk into the gym, and then there you decide if you can be fucked to train that day or not. And then go home or go and exercise if you want to, right? But it's about exposure. It's not about discipline. It's not You don't need to train every day. But if you're struggling with trying to get fitter and build muscle and do exercise, you know, go to the gym every day. But decide there at the gym after you've changed whether you feel like training that day or not. Right? Go there first. Go there to decide whether you feel like it or not. Don't decide at home, just every day, because you don't need to train every day. But it's easier for you to make those decisions and be honest with yourself if you're there standing in front of it and saying, look, I don't feel like it today. That's it, you know? So, again, I hope these words of wisdom will get to you, because I know there's a lot of people who struggle with weight and muscle, and especially, you know, whether you're a woman or a man, it's actually super easy. And the only reason why so many people struggle with it is because they're being fed lies and they're being conditioned to poison themselves. You're being lied to. Like, the reason that so many of us are obese and sick and weak is because the system is trying to destroy you. That's why it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're terrible at making decisions. It's not because you have a terrible appetite and you're addicted to food. No. Most of these foods, there's billions of dollars that go into researching how to maximize their how addictive they are. There's war against you to make you sick and fat so they can sell you pills. It's not your fault. The reason why you're having difficulties with your weight and you're having difficulties with your health is because the environment you grew up in has evolved into an environment that's feeding you shit. It's not your fault. And it's about disconnecting from that matrix of shit. Fat shaming is there's a lot of discussion as whether fat shaming is good or not. But the problem is fat shaming, again, these people are fat because of the system. And when we fat shame people, it's because we don't understand that the matrix is trying to get us to fight against each other. It's trying to ridicule. Fat shaming does work to some degree, but it's also probably causing a lot more people to commit suicide than actually making them change their lifestyle. And they don't know what to do. It's a matter of, it's not ignorance. It's just you're everything you think you know is a lie when it comes to the subject. So of course, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to eat? What am I supposed to do? Train and can I do this? Can I do that? You have to now embark. You weigh 400 pounds and now you have to embark on this journey for 5 years, making all these mistakes and knowing what to do and what not to do and what's healthy and what's not healthy. I don't do fat shaming because I can easily gain 30 kilos and lose that 30 kilos because I've done that a bunch of times and I know how to do it. And I do it to prove a point. I do it to show to my friends that, look, you guys need to shut the fuck up because I know what I'm doing. You don't. And, for example, my parents, oh, you're so fat. You should really, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, fine. And then 6 months later, I'm, size 30 and it's like, oh, now they're feeling a little bit like, oh, maybe I should do something because it's so easy. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to exercise. You can just sit around, do nothing all day, as long as you're not eating all these carbohydrates. Your body you will lose all your body weight without doing any exercise if you just don't eat junk food. Eat meat. I do an extra step. I do a lot of fasting, but I don't know if I can recommend fasting straight away with somebody who's been struggling with eating disorders their whole lives. I mean, I think I would start off with continue overeating, but overeat the meat. See where that goes for a while, for a few months, so you can train your body to to think, you train your mind and body to think differently about food, and to sort of have like a different approach to eating that's got a little bit more, you know, um, awareness associated with it. And then, yeah, go into fasting mode. But fasting is much more difficult if you've been eating a lot of carbs. It's much easier if you've been eating a lot of fat. So, yeah, if you've listened this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. And again, guys, like if you Chief John Smith at the age of 137. Think about that. Think about that.